Hey parents, before we start today's episode, I have exciting news. We're hosting a podcast pop-up where you can interact with the resources and guests featured here in real life. It's the second annual Podcast-a-Palooza, and it's free to attend. There will be a live animal presentation by Animal Tales and food trucks like Bam Snowballs, Kip's Hot Dogs, and Melt Pensacola. Plus, one lucky guest will win a $250 Amazon gift card. So mark your calendar for Saturday, February 1st, 2025, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Booker T. Washington High School. We'll see you there.
Part of that has to do with the fact that we're co-located with Washington High School, and so our students can physically go over to Washington and participate in the course and then still remain students at Workman. One of the things that I think is really cool about it is the fact that they are receiving high school credit while they're actually still students at Workman in the 8th grade. So we're the only ones that have an 8th grade ROTC program.
Welcome to the Voices United in Education podcast. Each week, we showcase the teachers, administrators, and community members who go the extra mile to contribute to the success of every student in Escambia County. You'll meet the real people behind the titles and learn about the amazing resources to support every student's success. Between the homework and video games, we all hope our kids will become confident and conscientious leaders. But of course, hope is not a plan. My next guests are the assistant principal at Workman Middle School and the Naval Science instructor at Booker T. Washington High School. Today, they're going to share how students who are taking advantage of the NJROTC unique partnership between the two schools are building themselves up to be strong leaders and getting college scholarships in the process. Community-minded and future-oriented service and stewardship, Dr. Heather Schultz and Master Chief John Spaulding. Thanks, guys, for being here.
Thanks for having us.
So, Dr. Schultz, tell us how the Washington and Workman NJROTC collaboration is unique, because we're in a military community. A lot of us know what ROTC is, but what makes this kind of arrangement special?
So this arrangement is very special. We are the only middle school in Escambia County that actually has an ROTC program. Part of that has to do with the fact that we're co-located with Washington High School, and so our students can physically go over to Washington and participate in the course and then still remain students at Workman. One of the things that I think is really cool about it is the fact that they are receiving high school credit while they're actually still students at Workman in the 8th grade. So we're the only ones that have an 8th grade ROTC program.
And how long has that been established?
We're in our 4th year.
Wow, that's incredible. And Master Chief, you're with the kids every single day. What kind of impact before and after have you seen with students?
I think that just the growth of some of them. And I always like to say that this program is not for every student. I mean, what I try to teach to them is the same thing that I'm teaching to the high school kids. Coming over here today, I realized that these students are 2 years removed from being in elementary school. So I got to remember that aspect of it. But I still teach them the same thing I use my high school kids. 4 years we've been doing this program. We still got students that started my first year doing this. They're like, juniors now? I think juniors now. So, yeah.
Is that difficult to ride that line between elevating the student up to higher standards and remembering, as you put it, they're only 2 years removed from elementary age?
When I first started this job, it was.
Yeah.
And most instructors will tell you the first year doing this is they still think they're in the military, and it's just like, you can't do that. Being in this is like my 17th year doing it. I do remember that. I do remember where they came from. So I try to elevate them up, and sometimes I need to encourage them a little more than maybe I should, but they get my point.
Yeah.
But I still remember that they are still basically children.
Do any specific kids come to mind when you are having a hard day and you think about like, okay, why am I doing this? Is there any specific before and after story of impact that you can think of and share?
There was one student that I had, and I thought about him the other day. There's just about 2 or 3 of them, because I know we talked before about this. This young man, he came to us when he was, I think, a junior. And because I usually get all the first-year cadets, and then Commander Brown gets second, third, and fourth year. But this young man, junior, and he'd had some problems coming up through like middle school, and he was maybe a year or two older than the other kids, but junior year. So in the summertime, we have camps for these kids. So I asked him one day, I said, would you think about going to leadership camp? And he goes, well, I said, I think you'd really do good. And he says, oh, okay. So I sent him to leadership camp. Well, we have to do a physical training aspect. Second day we were at camp. Well, one of the instructors came over and he said, Master Chief, he said, you got one of your students on the bus over there. So I went over and there was this young man. He was just crumbled. And he goes, Master Chief, I love you, but you're just trying to kill me. I mean, he was wore out. He was wore out.
Oh, no.
But no, he was all right. But he passed, he got his, basically what they do, leadership, they get a silver cord. And he got that, and he was so proud of that. And that's what reminds me of why this program is there for kids like that. I mean, we got students that are like 4.2 GPA, something like that. But this kid was, I mean, he had a hard time growing up. But, I mean, he graduated. He's done I've seen him a couple of times in the last few years. He's done very well. But, I mean, he's one of those kids, that's why we get the program, is kids like that.
So tell me more about leadership camp.
Leadership camp is what ROTC does. I mean, each area around the country has it. And leadership camp is, but they have two types. They have like basic leadership, which is like first year cadets go to it. And then they have leadership academy, which is like your juniors and seniors go to it. A lot of it is we do teach the same thing we do throughout the year, but a little more aspect to it. And then they have like a graduation at the end, and they have like, they pick the top platoon of battalion of whatever group that kid's in, and then give individual awards out. And it's pretty good. And then they get what they call their silver cord that's the Leadership Academy.
When you say we teach them the same thing, I would love to hear more about that, because as I alluded to in the introduction, parents want their kids to be strong leaders, but parenting is complex and hard. There's a lot of gears moving, right? A lot of spinning plates. And sometimes parents have you heard that saying, don't ask the fish how the water is? Right? Because they don't know. Oh, there's water? What? I think that can happen to parents sometimes. They're too close to their kids to be able to have the full spectrum of influence that they want. You need those other mentors, those other figures in the community to come together and raise those kids up. So when you talk about what you teach in NJROTC is also reiterated in the leadership camp, can you paint a picture of what that is?
We talk about the Navy, we talk about the military, we talk about, like my first year cadets, they learn about emotions, we talk about attitudes.
Wait, emotions? Military and emotions, those two in my mind are very contrasting. Talk to me about how you're teaching children about emotions.
How their emotions are, how to control their emotions, because we all know that teenagers nowadays, there's a lot of emotion. So we try to tell them how to corral that emotion, how to talk to people without acting up in class, acting out in public. And a lot of it is what I try to teach is I call it social settings, because how to act out in public, how to act in class, how to act around teachers. Because what I've noticed, kind of going off, I guess I'm going to the left here, but I mean, students nowadays, they'll walk by a teacher and it's just like we aren't even there. Now, back in my day, we started teaching, we just clamped up because I'm not going to, but these kids, they just want you to be almost part of the problem. And that's what I try to talk to these kids about. Now, understand what your surroundings are and your emotions, attitudes, how you act to your fellow, as students or cadets, and how you act to your teacher. Don't treat me like you would your kid sister. Sometimes they act like that, and I tell them all the time, they'll kind of, ask me a question. I said, excuse me? I'm not home now. Yeah, you aren't home now. You're talking to me. So, but anyways.
You said earlier, or in one of our earlier discussions, about how you don't discipline children, but in a way, you're teaching self-discipline by teaching them, like, where is the time and place. And I think that is a middle school lesson right there, is time and place. Like, we've gotten to that point. And that is what I speak to children about all the time. Like, listen, there's a time and place. This isn't it. Where might a better time and place be for that? So that sounds like exactly what you're teaching them. when you say emotions, it's kind of all of that attitude, that who you are as a human.
Self-leadership.
But you talked about the self-discipline, which I'm glad you brought that point up. I always ask, the first day of school, I always ask students, do you want to be in ROTC? It doesn't matter, 8th grade or whatever. Do you want to be in ROTC? No, my mom wanted to be in the air, or a parent will tell me I want them in ROTC because they need the discipline. I tell them, ma'am, that's not what ROTC is about. You're supposed to be the disciplinary, not me. That parent, which sometimes we end up being that second parent, whatever, Commander Brown or myself, because these kids they don't have that at home. But yeah. But
that's really interesting. When it comes to those lessons of self-leadership, time and place, as you said, Dr. Schultz, what do you think the benefit is with these messages getting in early because of this partnership between the two schools? Do you feel like it's more effective than the students simply getting these messages from the school, at least at the high school level?
I would say yes, because you're allowing the 8th graders to kind of immerse into the high school slowly. And so it's almost like a period of transition. And so now not only are they getting the messages about time and place, and they're experiencing, going over to the high school and seeing the other kids in the hallway. And maybe some of them ride the bus in the morning with the high schoolers. And so I think it really lends itself to being a positive experience for those kids.
You do tend to have like a more macro view where, Master Chief's like in it, in the micro,
yes.
And you're more of the macro. Since the program's been going on 4 years, have you seen any measurable changes in behavior, attendance outcomes, grades?
I want to say yes, behavior, truly. Like, I know we keep coming back to that discipline thing, but the kids that come back from ROTC, I mean, even today, they're in their uniform. There's a certain attitude about them. Maybe attitude is not the right word, but there's just a certain air about them. They're wearing their uniform. It's like they're proud. The teachers in the hallways at our school at Workman know, like, hey, that's an ROTC student, and they have very high expectations of them. They'll reach out if there's any issues. Oh, well, you're an ROTC, you've got higher expectations. And so I don't have data to support, quote unquote, a measurement, but just the attitude and the feeling of how, those students that come back on campus once they leave the high school. Because every day they show up at Washington High School for first period, and then they walk back over to Workman for our first period. And so every day they're being immersed in that situation. And
so you sense that cultural shift happening.
Yes.
It's such a liminal age.
Yes.
And so I could see the benefit of 8th graders dipping their toe in the water of higher social expectations, higher personal responsibility expectations, being around older students, because you're such an in-betweener as an 8th grader.
Yes.
You could easily act like a 6th grader.
Yes.
Or easily act like a 9th or 10th grader.
Absolutely.
Just from a developmental standpoint. And I love that you brought up that ROTC students, they have an air about them. And so, Master Chief, I wanted to ask you about that because I always found military students have a leg up academically, socially. That was my observation from being at Offutt Air Base in Nebraska. The ROTC students there, and even just the military kids who weren't in ROTC, I felt like, they know things. They're so much more worldly. They carried themselves in a way that I admired. Do you think that kind of transformation is possible with students who participate in the program but aren't from a military family and do not plan to go into the military?
Yes, I think it is. I mean, because we talked before, some of these kids just want a group to belong to. And I mean, you got like football, you got basketball and something, they kind of go that. But these kids, we got some kids that's why they come to school. They love ROTC and they do pretty good in it. And some of them will go to the military. The last few years, we've had quite a few go to the military. But some of them don't. Some go to college, and that's what we hope for. But yeah, I mean, we've got kids that come in and they're like real meek when they first start. And after a couple of years, they start blossoming. They start getting involved because we try to get them involved in things. And
like what?
Well, like like we do afternoon activity. We do orienteering. We do air rifle. We do drill. Is it a challenge? Yes. It's trying to get kids to get involved in this. Some kids they do, some kids they don't. Sometimes you see the same kids. You see the same 10, 15 kids, and the rest of them they might come for a couple of days, but then they don't come again because they don't like the discipline of drill. They don't like to be told by another cadet because that's the whole function for us is getting that cadet leadership to take ownership and take charge. That's why when you get these juniors and seniors, that's who we rely on. You guys, hey, you got it. You're going to take over. I'm going to guide you, be a mentor, but you guys need to step up and start teaching these younger kids how to do it.
I see that even with the 8th grade cadets. There was a day I was trying to line them up to take a picture, and I'm not an ROTC person. I've not been in ROTC, so I don't always know the language. So here I am trying to line them up like, okay, aren't you at like attention? And one of the 8th graders, and they put there, I was like, your hat, what's it called? And I think it's called a cover.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I learned that it was called a cover. But so I'm like, okay, put your stuff. And so they're teaching me. So not only are they teaching me, but then one of the young cadets, she goes like checking their formation, what they're looking like, how their hands are, moving their feet. Getting them in that appropriate posture. I'm like, oh, thank you so much. That was an 8th grader. She just took it upon herself to go over there and line them up and do what needed to be done. So even in the 8th graders, you see that leadership starting to come out.
Wow. And that's attention to detail. Think about a parent being like, you stepped over the dirty laundry 10 times. Could you just notice that it's on the floor and pick it up? Like, I'm thinking about the at-home practical application of noticing these details and taking initiative, which is pretty awesome. And every parent would want that. But I think there are some parents out there who have a hesitation about enrolling their kid in an ROTC program because they think that it's just, well, you're grooming my kid to be in the military. Do you want to address that?
No, that's very true. We talked about, the parent wants the student in ROTC because of discipline. Well, that's not my job. But we had teacher night here. We had teacher night about 4 or 5 years ago when the parent walked in and I said, well, we're about scholarships. And she looked at me like, what? I said, yeah. I said, that's what ROTC is about, is scholarships. We get recruiters in there to talk to the class because we want to have a plan after they graduate. And we usually tell them, if you want a scholarship, start thinking about it about your sophomore year. But don't wait till your senior year, because we've had seniors come back after Christmas break and go, hey, you think you can get me a scholarship? Well, no, you're about a year and a half too late. But scholarships, I know darn well they leave money on the table every year because kids don't want the scholarship. A few years ago, we had 2 cadets that all they had to do was sign on the dotted line. They could have gone to college, but they didn't want to go because it was up north someplace. They didn't want to go. All they do is sign your name. They would have, full ride. But, oh, yeah. Most of the time, you can get a 4-year scholarship. We've had a few students go over like UWF, and they don't get a scholarship. But what they'll do, they'll pay for like the first year, and then they'll go join to either, I think they got Air Force and Army over there, either join one of those and work their way up and show those instructors what they want to do. And then they'll get picked up the next year for a scholarship. And we've had 2 or 3 of them get commissioned that way over there. Tell these kids there's money out there, but you got to earn it. The kicker is once you say, well, if you get a scholarship from us, you have to obligate service. What? Oh, no. I don't want to do that. Because I put on the board yesterday about going to college and basically, if you obligate your time and then you want to resign your commission. I said it was like 27 years old.
Right. And
you got your benefits. You got your, there's probably a good chance you're going to get your master's degree. And I don't. It's like, there you go. But a lot of benefits.
It's another door open for them. And I think that's what's important.
Yeah.
But if parents know that's what I'm saying. Like what listeners didn't hear is my jaw dropping when you were telling me that the student decided not to get a 4-year full ride scholarships. My parents would have punished me severely if they knew that I had just been like, shoulder shrug. I'm not going to do that. And to your point about maybe UWF, that is not always a full ride scholarship. But if they can get a first year covered and then they can enlist and graduate a commissioned officer with not having the rest of school paid for, that's a huge deal because you're talking about graduating debt free with a job and a path, like an actual trajectory.
Well, that's what, and again, as I said, that's what gets them is that obligated service. Because I don't, be honest with you, I don't know if it's like 4 or 5 years I have to obligate that service.
Mm-hmm. Do they get years of service added for participation in ROTC? Like for their years of service? Like if you were to go to the Naval Academy, you get years of service.
Because you did ROTC in high school? Mm-hmm. No.
I thought they did.
No.
Okay. I thought that was one of the benefits.
No. If you do Like you go like the regular, you enlist like in the Navy. We can do a letter of recommendation. And they can go in, instead of going as E1, they can go in like as in, if they graduate boot camp, come out as an E3.
Okay.
And it's
a big salary difference.
So there is a benefit to it. It's just not your service.
Yeah. So anyways, but yes. But,
that's a bit of a difference. Yeah. So talk to me about a day in the life, because, now that we've kind of myth busted a little bit, your parents are not dropping their kids off at ROTC to fix them and have them act right. The kids obviously have lots of agency when it comes to choosing their path, because the one student, as you gave as an example, decided not to do that. So now let's talk about what is the obligation for the student and the parent? Because I think that can also be an under-discussed ingredient in any sort of extracurricular activity for a student, right? Like the parent, maybe they're not totally sold on it. Their kid wants to try something. Parents thinking, oh yeah, remember those piano lessons I paid for and I drove you to, and now you don't play piano? Like this is the mind of perhaps a parent listening right now. So kind of paint a picture of what the activities are, what time do they have to get to school, are there extra things that they need to be transported to, et cetera?
At beginning of the year, we send paperwork home. I mean, the kid enrolls, say 8th grade enrolls, and we usually get a list in the summertime. I think right now, I think we're down to like 18 students, and we started out with about 26 or whatever. And again, it's just because kids, roll out.
It's not for everybody.
Yeah, it's not for everybody. But we never charged a fee, but we charge a small fee at the beginning of the year for like insurance, for name tags. The uniform that is given to the student doesn't cost them anything. A lot of parents say, well, how much is the uniform going to cost me? I said, it's not going to cost you a dime. But if you don't bring certain items back, it's going to cost you quite a bit, especially when that young man or young lady go to graduate and they see a bill from Mass G. Spaulding from 3 years ago for like $300 for uniforms. Oh, you never bought it back. So, but no, they get dropped off. We start school, I think, 8:30. And we go till about 9:25. Now I usually take them back about 9:10, 9:15. We get different usually we do drill on one day. We have uniforms on Wednesday, which is today. We do physical training twice a week, and we do academics. And we were supposed to do the Veterans Day parade, but we got rained out, so we didn't make the students go to that.
So that would be kind of part of the extra things that you mentioned earlier. You try to involve them in.
There's two events that are mandatory. One was the Veterans Day Parade, and another one is coming up in January. It's called the Area Manager Inspection. That's our area manager, and he comes over and does inspection of our program. Basically, he's looking at Commander Brown and myself, but he looks at all the students. And
the students come and tell us, like, it's inspection day. And I'm like, okay, that's okay. I don't know. I didn't always know what it was until they started telling me, like, we have to do all this stuff. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. I love your perspective being so fresh.
I don't know all this stuff. So they come in and I'm like, well, what's inspection day? What do you have to do? And they start telling me all the things, and they get real excited about it.
That's interesting. It sounds like from your perspective, you're seeing a lot more engagement. Like the kids are plugged in, they're with it a little bit more. And from your perspective, it's like they have more opportunity. Am I summarizing that about right?
Absolutely. Like he mentions the PT days. They have these little yellow Navy shirts and shorts. I guess it's the same thing. Your Navy. Yeah, y'all gotta tell me about this language here. I guess it's the same thing your like adults wear for PT. So they come looking like adults in their little PT uniforms, and they're sweaty. And I'll say, and they come in every morning and say hi to me, and I'm like, well, how was PT today? And they're like, oh, it was great. And I'm like, I would not have been saying PT was great in the 8th grade, but they love it.
Well, as we wrap up, are there any final thoughts from either of you that you want to leave parents with regarding the potential for their kids for leadership development, the program in general?
I think it's an incredible opportunity that not many people are aware of, that we do offer this. Again, it's not for everybody, but it just opens doors, allows for another thing for students to try, to get involved in. The students that we have, it's just incredible that they get up early. I mean, I can't describe how positive the experience is and how much it helps these students grow and change. And if it's not for everybody, that's okay too. It's not the end of the world. If you decide, you know what, this isn't for me, it's no big deal. It's just another chance to try something, to interact with your peers, to dip your toes in the high school, to get some leadership skills. It's just an incredible opportunity. And I'm just really excited that we're able to get this information out so that more people can be aware of what we got going on.
I think they grow up a little faster, and parents probably need to get a little more involved with what I've seen. And I talk about 8th grade, I know we're talking about 8th grade, it's freshmen, that there are some students that are the adult in the family, and I know you see a lot of it, and I see a lot of it, and sometimes it's just like you kind of go a little easier and sometimes on that student. But no, it's a good program. To be honest, I don't know where our NJROTC is going to go here in the next few years, but things are changing. I mean, that out of my league. So anyways, but no, it's a good program.
Well, thank you so much for investing in the lives of kids and being able to collaborate in a way that really is for the kids. I think that's really special. So I appreciate what y'all are doing and that you took time to come here and share it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe and share. Voices United in Education is a production of Escambia County Public Schools.